In June 2025, the 5th International Meditation Conference was held at Zhichenkar in Thimphu, Bhutan, hosted by the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies, marking a unique convergence of global perspectives. Held from the 3rd to the 6th, the event brought together meditation masters, scientists, philosophers, and practitioners from around the world. Under the theme Science, Meditation, and Mindfulness, the conference explored the meeting points between ancient contemplative practices and modern research. Topics ranged from neuroplasticity and AI to indigenous traditions, dream yoga, and ethical dimensions of consciousness studies. Across 4 days, participants shared insights, demonstrated techniques, and reflected on the evolving role of meditation in science, culture, and daily life. We now present to you 6 speakers we interviewed from the conference. We are very delighted to have Professor Dr. Tania Singer with us today. Following her presentation on social neuroscience perspective on meditation research, we are very delighted to have you on the set and have a conversation. So before starting our conversation, can you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Thank you for having me, and I'm Tania Singer, Professor Dr. Tania Singer, and I'm the director of the Social Neuroscience Lab in Berlin, which is the capital of Germany, and I work for the Max Planck Society. That's a research society, a German research society. Since 25 years I'm basically doing research in the domain of empathy, compassion, meditation research, mental health research, and also a little bit of caring economics and economic research.
Thank you, Doctor. Following your presentation, we are very excited to delve deeper into your thoughts and perspective about it. So to start with, I would like to ask Doctor, what have you found to be the most powerful effect of compassion training on people's everyday behavior?
I have studied many different types of meditation, right? So like attention-based, shamatha-based meditation, what we call in the Western mindfulness, like attention-based mindfulness. But we have also compared that with meditation, which are more compassion-based or loving kindness. We call them socio-emotional affective because it's all about care and altruism motivation. And then we have studied a third type of meditation, which is more metacognitive. So it's like observing your thoughts and getting this bird's eye perspective on your mind, and also perspective taking on others, meaning like how do I understand that other people have other beliefs? And what we found in many, many different papers and studies is that each of these meditation have very different effects. So it really matters what you practice. It's not just like one mindfulness practice or one meditation is, as you know, in your country. And so, for example, compassion meditation is very, very powerful to change altruistic behavior, cooperative behavior. It reduces social stress, like the stress we have of feeling not good enough or feeling not appropriate, social press. Yeah, it helps decrease depression as well. So compassion practices are very powerful, but for example, classic mindfulness practice are very good if you want to stabilize your mind, or like becoming more calm, or stabilizing your attention. And these metacognitive practices, like observing thought or perspective taking, they are very good to foster social intelligence, to become better in conflict resolution, and how to understand people from very different continents or ages or religious belief, in intercultural communication. So I think I cannot really say this meditation is the best, because it depends what you want to cultivate, right? It depends what you want to foster.
Thank you, Doctor. Can you explain how contemplative practices, like the contemplative diets, help strengthen social connections?
The contemplative diets is a practice which I particularly love, and I have done a lot of research lately, because we introduced this partner-based meditation. You can think of it as contemplative practice, like a meditation, but now you have a partner. And there is, every day you have a real person you practice with. So you would ask me a question, for example, Tania, tell me a situation of the last day where you felt stress or anger or difficult emotion. How did it feel in your body? I explore loudly, and so I do like vipassana on difficult emotion, yeah, this would be the term. And you are just listening, you are not allowed to interrupt, you are not allowed to give me any advice to like a normal dialogue, you just non-judgmentally, empathically listen. And so you are training your non-judgment and tolerance by listening and being present, and I'm training to accept difficult emotion, to cope better with stress. And then the second question is about gratitude. So by exploring everyday gratitude, I'm boosting my care system. I'm strengthening my resilience and my optimism. And so we have shown in a study during the COVID pandemic that with these contemplative social mindfulness, you could call it social mindfulness, we could bring people out of loneliness and reconnect them more closely to each other, no? So we could foster social cohesion. And that was very important because after pandemic, people were totally isolated, and especially young people suffered a lot. We have made research on that in the whole world, the outcome of the pandemic was that especially women and young people suffered mostly mentally, and so depression went up, stress went up. And the dyadic practice, if you do it over 8 to 10 weeks daily, every day, 12 minutes every day, little practice, then you can reduce depression, you can reduce stress, you can boost resilience, you can boost social closeness. So it's very, very efficient and very helping people. So we have done an online training because we didn't know at that time whether we would go back in confinement, no? During the COVID pandemic, we couldn't leave the house. No? So we did these trainings. So I would do a diet with you for 1 week and then with her for a week. And so people reconnected with each other. No? They reconnected deeply with themselves, with others, and with humanity. And because it has this social effect, more than mindfulness. If you do mindfulness training 10 weeks, we compared that. It's also good. You also reduce some depression and stress. But you cannot really increase social connectedness because you are sitting alone, no? And the diet, they increase social connectedness and reduce loneliness. And so it's, I think, a practice which is very, very important for the modern times where so many young people are lonely.
I think diets practice or contemplative diets, it sounds very effective, ma'am. In continuation, I would also like to know, how does your concept of caring economics addresses the limitation of current economic systems?
Yeah, that was a funny thing, which, you know, you might ask me why, as a psychologist in neuroscience, I'm working on economic model. There was a time in my life where I was in an interdisciplinary research network, and the most senior person who put together this network was an economist. And so we were all studying the conditions of cooperation to flourish or the condition for cooperation to break down, you know what? And so this question is important for psychologists, for social neuroscientists, for economists, for everyone. So we were this big network, and I was professor now in the economy department. Even so, I'm a psychologist and brain scientist. So it was, I had to learn all the economic model. Because I also had to give lectures for students. So I realized that in the modern Homo economicus, in modern economic theory, still in all the books, right, the backbone of our capitalistic theory, that this is very, very far away from what we know in psychology and neuroscience and biology about human nature. It reduces a human being to become a like self-interested a person, right, who is only always wanting to have more and to gain and to grasp and I was an empathy, compassion, altruism researcher, and I said, how does it come that modern economic theory doesn't know about these important concepts. So we started working with economists together to rethink economic models, in putting psychological theory and biological and neuroscience theory into the picture. And so I teach to the economics, and I said, look, it's a bit technical perhaps for an audience which is not economic, but in economy they talk about preferences, right? They talk about, today I like grapes more than chocolate. No, let's say chocolate more than grapes, because everyone likes chocolate more than grapes, I think. And then the economy theory say, this is a preference, right? I like chocolate more than grapes. And that is context insensitive. This means irrespective of the day, of how old I am, where I am, I always like chocolate more than grapes, which is of course not right. Then they say it is endogenously given, meaning this comes from nowhere that I like chocolate more than, it's just there. But for a psychologist, it's like, we know we can learn, right? It depends a lot of the culture, of our upbringing, of, the education, so on. So I said, instead of thinking about just one preference and utility function in the model of decision making, you should rather think about what we know from motivation psychology. We have very, very different motivational systems coming from evolutionary, like fear or threat, right? When some danger is, we have threat systems, so we run away or we fight or we freeze, right? But we also have, like incentive-focused system, consumption, power, achievement, right? These are like motivational system where we want to have more power, more achievement, getting better marks, right? So that's a class. But then we also have social motivation system. We have care and affiliation, like I want to belong to a group, or like this care is altruistic motivation. I want, if my child is in danger and I'm a mother, I just jump under the car. Economists would say, is it rational to jump under the car to save my child? I don't know, I could die with a probability of, that is homo economicus. But nature has the care system, right? In millisecond, we are under the car, not thinking we are saving. So that's the altruistic care system. And so we are advocating that our institutions, our system, our economy needs to rebalance nature, the picture of human nature, and put more emphasis on the care system and the social affiliation, relational systems in us, to rebalance all our institutions, because the Western institutions have become too heavily weighted on consumption, power, achievement, and if you are, all these motivation systems are wonderful and they're necessary, but they need to be in balance. And what happened in our society is we are totally out of balance, underrepresenting compassion, care, and all these qualities, and overrepresenting achievement, gain, growth, money, materialism, right? And to rebalance the whole world, we need to first start rebalancing it in ourselves. And this is where diet training and mental training and compassion training can help, right? To change the balance on an individual level, so that then society can also work on a macro level.
Last but not the least, ma'am, Doctor, I would like to know, what role do you believe neuroscience should play in shaping education, health, or economic policies?
You can ask yourself, what does knowing about the brain has to do with, helping healthcare or education? And of course, it is indirect effect. I have an example. This example is perhaps also a good example because it also speaks to how we do research in contemplative neuroscience. The contemplative neuroscience is like a rather new field, which came out of the Mind and Life Institute dialogues with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and a lot of Buddhist monks and Western scientists like me. And so for example, I scanned a brain of a Buddhist monk called Mathieu Ricard. He's a French Buddhist monk. and he was a pupil of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, and he is long-term meditator, practitioner, but because he was also a Western scientist in young years, he was a biologist, he knows about Western science, so he was my favorite guinea pig. And to understand how compassion meditation is represented in the brain and how it changes the brain, I was scanning his brain. And I came from empathy research, from neuroscience empathy researcher. And in empathy research, we had understood that, for example, if you suffer, my brain is activating networks in the brain which process my own suffering. So it's like a mirror. It's like you're suffering, I feel it in my brain and body like my own.
It's like reflection.
It's like emotional resonance, right? And I had studied a lot of these cases, no? When I put a normal, Londoner or, from Europe, someone who is not practitioner, into the scanner and they see someone suffering, their pain networks light up, no? They activate because they feel the suffering of the other in their own brain. And I wanted to see with Madhyarika and the Buddhist monk, when they do thousands of hours of compassion meditation, how these empathic brain response look like. And what we discovered by this experiment together is that when he engaged into compassion meditation, other networks in the brain were activated. And these networks are networks which care affiliation network. They come with more positive emotion of love and warmth. And so I was like, Mathieu, I don't understand what you're doing. There are networks which are activated, which are not suffering networks, not pain networks. And he was like, why would I have to suffer with these children? You asked me to go into compassion. And I was like, yeah, but are you not suffering with these children then? He's like, no, I'm building this caring, altruistic motivation, this incredible, holding these children like they would be my children, like a mother would hold this absolutely unconditional love. And so I was like, okay, so I understand now that empathy and compassion is two different things. So then I asked him in the scanner, can you now go into what we call empathy and just suffer with these children so that I can see whether you have these pain networks, right? That just to be sure. So he went into that, and then I saw these pain networks lighting up. And then he said to me, because I said, okay, now I know you have that too. It's just different words, right? Empathy is resonating with, and compassion comes from another system, from the care system. It's very resilient, very strong. But you can burn out of empathic distress. So we did a lot of these studies then, because it was so mind-blowing for both of us to have discovered these two networks and how different they are, right? So now, out of this neuroscientific studies with a Buddhist monk in the scanner, we have developed a whole training program where we teach healthcare provider how to avoid to go from healthy empathy into empathic distress, because once you are in empathic distress, you cannot help the other anymore. You are stressed yourself, and on the long run, you burn out. And in health system and healthcare, we have a lot of burnout rates. So now we train nurses and medical students and people how to recognize the empathic system when it's healthy empathy, and when it is going into this personal distress, into the stress, and how you can then move to compassion. And then how you protect yourself from burnout, So we have developed new meditation, which did neither exist in Buddhism nor in the Western. So something from this conversation, something new came out. And this is just an example of how neuroscientific studies could have helped develop now very concrete programs we bring into society, into healthcare, to help education of mental practitioners.
I have only this set of questions for you, Doctor. Yeah. And would you like to add on something if you missed out on anything?
There is perhaps one thing which I noticed when I was on this conference, because I have been 20 years on conference with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Western scientists, and now I was here in Bhutan, and for the first time on such a kind of conference. And I think I would hope and wish that that the monastic body finds it enough interesting to talk to Western scientists, you know, that we could somehow encourage them here in Bhutan, because you have so many practitioners, very high-level practitioners, to engage more and more with the Western scientific world and not to be afraid of it, but to be open and to explore. Because, for example, this example I just give to you, it produced a huge amount of benefits to the world, but it was only possible because Mathieu was very open, I was open to this dialogue across culture, across thinking system, right? So I think I would hope that, yeah, that these conferences like we just did more and more help to open up the real dialogue, no? Not just like presentations, but to really discuss deep questions of human nature and how we can help.
It is very fascinating to hear the story about you and Matthew doing the experiment and coming up with something very fascinating. Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom. We truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.